Well, welcome everybody to the April meeting of the Lower Makefield Farmland Preservation Incorporated. I'm Michael Blank, I'm the president, and joining me is Dennis Stedman, who is the vice president and acting secretary, Dan Bonkoski, who is our treasurer, and Sean Carney, who is one of our new members. So welcome everybody if you're listening in. So we'll go right into the agenda. The approval of minutes of our March meeting is the first topic, and I'll turn it over to our acting secretary, Dennis Stedman.
Thank you, Mike. Yes, the minutes have been circulated. We do have a quorum with 4 members. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes, and are there any edits or changes? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
A second.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes from the March meeting?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Right, minutes are approved. Thank you, Mike.
Yep.
You want me to jump right into the second agenda item?
Please, yep.
Second agenda item is a proposal to start a trial, a couple-year trial of Honeybee hive farming on Makefield Brook property. Let me share my screen if I could to help with this discussion. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. First of all, I want to talk about the location of the hive. It's in the wooded area, which we cannot crop, of course, behind Wheat Shift Road. And it's, I went out with Dr. Sven, who is a PhD entomologist and a hobby honey beekeeper for many years. I've drawn on this map, the X is his house at 1433. He would access the woods through his backyard, which we would give him explicit permission to do, since it's a no trespassing area, and accommodate his access. It's 60 yards behind his backyard, and it's about 120 yards from the nearest backyard on Brentwood Road. So it's in this corner of the field, as you can see. It's probably about 30 yards from the cornfield itself. And it's important for the bees to be in a sunny location, particularly in the winter months, to help warm the hive. And so we went out there and picked a location that the beekeeper believes is going to be a successful location. We did see a number, by the way, of flowering trees in this woods. This time of year, is the time to find them. So that's the location. Just a couple facts to offer that may be helpful. That our beekeeper has mentioned. When most people think of bees, they think of swarms of flying bugs and the kinds of things we see around our house. Those are really the bad guys. These are pictures of those. Yellow jackets, paper wasps, they build these kinds of nests. We see them a lot. They are more aggressive and more apt to sting, certainly than a honeybee. The European honeybee, the breed that is used for honeybee keeping, of course, is a docile breed, hence, for obvious reasons. And they can only sting once in their life. They die if they sting, and so they tend not to do that unless it's absolutely necessary. And we've even seen beekeeping very successfully in Manhattan as urban bee beehives have become more popular. So the European honeybee is what we're talking about. This is a picture of a hive. This is a 5-stage hive. We will start. The beekeeper will start the first year trying to establish one stage, and then as the colony grows and successfully matures, he can expand that, and there'll be 2 of these structures. In terms of the benefits of honeybees, of course, are numerous. They're very good for local gardens and plant life. They're very active pollinators. So we expect surrounding woods, gardens, trees to see more fruiting. They're a gentle bee species, specifically used by beekeepers. And so actually by having this European breed available in our area, they will crossbreed with the local domestic honeybees, which tend to be more aggressive, and actually by interbreeding probably reduce the assertiveness or aggressiveness of local bees. Of course, they're going to produce honey and beeswax. This is not a commercial operation; it's a hobby operation. So the product will be given away, and importantly, for farmland preservation, this helps combat the global problem of honeybee colony collapse. There's been a real difficulty around the world in maintaining bee populations. Of course, we won't have food without honeybees, and so we'd like to contribute to that general benefit. The beekeeper will keep the hives supplied with food initially in the winter to help get them supplement their food, get them going. Keep them supplied with water. The legs of the hive will have natural wells that are kept full of water, so they won't be seeking out water. They fly up to 5 miles in all directions. And so we don't expect them to be concentrated in any one area, not necessarily concentrated in the hive vicinity. They'll come back to that, but they'll be looking very broadly in the township for pollen. Our beekeeper, we're lucky, Dr. Sven Strad. He's a PhD entomologist and very experienced in this. And we have marked out a 15-foot by 15-foot plot that Farmland is proposing to lease to our beekeeper and enter a formal lease to do so. He has made these two of these signs, which he will post immediately there, at the edge of that 15-foot plot, and with some stakes and some sort of string will demarcate the 15 by 15-foot area, just to kind of make a visual obvious barrier to encourage people not to wander in there. Like I said before, it's a no trespassing area. I've talked to both Tim Stewart and Sam Stewart, who crop that area. They have no problem with it. In fact, are supportive of it, because as farmers, particularly like pumpkins that they grow every year, they'll benefit by more bees in the area. And they do not use insecticide on the corn. There's no insecticidal spray. And the only insecticide that is used on corn production is the small amount that the seed is treated with. When the seed goes in the ground, it's actually coated in a substance to control corn rootworm, and so there's no spraying. So they're confident that they will not harm the bees, nor will the bees harm them. So yeah, I have a draft proposal of a lease that I have reviewed with the beekeeper and with the board. Because that land in its entirety is leased to the stewards, we have a side letter agreement with the stewards that we can execute, that I think the board has had a chance to review, where it makes clear that they're not responsible for the bees and Sven is responsible as spelled out in his lease. And so there will be no conflict or confusion of responsibilities. And that's the proposal. I'd ask first, before we open up to the public, I'd ask the board, or any questions, comments?
Yes, how comfortable are you, Dennis, with the insurance the situation?
I'm comfortable with that. Dr. Stren has reviewed his insurance coverage with his homeowner's insurance coverage with his insurance agent. He has increased his liability umbrella coverage to a suitable level consistent with our lease. And he has confirmation from the agent that that kind of hobby, which is what this is, would be covered. And his lease of the 225 square feet behind his house would be covered by his homeowners.
Okay.
Now, I'm comfortable with that. That all makes sense to me. I don't have any sort of written confirmation of that. I have Sven's statement, but that's the status of the insurance.
And also access. I know you've told us before, but maybe you could go over that again. How he'll gain access to our property.
Right now, because of some trees falling and things, there's one section of his fence that is actually beat down, thigh high. And
anyway,
so he and I just stepped over that fence right now. But the plan is to just install a very simple, what I call farm gate fence. He and I can do by ourselves. It's low tech, but it closes the fence off, but you can open it and swing it open, at its 3 or 4 foot width. That would allow him easier access because he'll be carrying, water and equipment through there. So
right.
Stepping over the fence isn't a good.
Isn't ideal.
But it's a
right.
it's a kind of simple gate. There's no real construction. We'll use the fencing that is already there.
Okay. Dan, Sean, questions for Dennis?
I have one comment and one question. First and foremost, Dennis, thanks for all of your work on this. I know you've kind of spearheaded this on behalf of the board, but kudos to the board and to yourself for kind of thinking about this and not dismissing it because it's new, but instead kind of running with it. I think it's a great idea and many months spent on it. So thanks for your time and effort. And I know this may have been discussed in the past, but I don't recall it. So I'd like to hear it. When is it that we'll review this to go over a couple of things? You showed us a 5-stage beehive that will start out being a 1 or a 2-stage and move on. I mean, in 1 year probably won't be a fair assessment of the success of this or not. Is it 2 years that we'll come back and look at this and reassess? Is it 3 years that we'll come back and reassess? What is the time frame that we're looking at here?
Well, yeah, thank you. It's a good question. I left that out when I discussed the lease. The beekeeper would like to have 2 seasons to try to get the colony established. If it doesn't establish in the first season, taking another swing at it in the second season, and then seeing that colony survive through the winter is really when you have success. So based on that, we developed a 3-year lease. That chance to maybe try, fail, try again. And so it's a 3-year lease, and we can, that's when we formally review it to assess if we want to renew. But of course, we can ask him for updates, or if there's any issues, I'd be bringing those to the board that occur.
Okay, so in approximately April of 24, we'll be discussing for renewal, but until then, we'll be discussing it as an ongoing process.
Exactly. It'll be one of the issues that we'll bring up as necessary, like we do, property buffers, et cetera.
Right, great, thank you.
Okay. Dan, do you have any questions for Dennis?
I think no questions. I would just say thanks again. It was great, I guess, that you kind of ran into Dr. Sven and started this conversation. So I think this is pretty exciting. I think it's going to be, and hopefully in 2 years when we regroup about this one, it's maybe it's a discussion around expansion rather than anything else.
Yeah, well, it's really to his credit. It was his idea. I visited his property because of a big tree came down, which we've all had to do on occasion. And in talking to him, he said, this actually would be a good place to start some honeybees. And I went from there. So we're very pleased that he had that idea.
I think we can, unless there's anything else, Dennis, that you want to add, we can move this to a vote.
Public comment?
I would just propose that we see if there's any public comment.
Okay, yes.
Can our operator,
John?
let us know if there's anyone in the waiting room?
John, are you there?
I'm sorry, what was that?
John, is there any public comment on the topic we're covering right now? Anybody?
No public comment.
Okay, well then we can move to a vote. So I'll just go around. Dan?
Well, I don't think you need to go around and vote individually.
All right.
Is that what you're asking? Or I'm not sure what the question
is.
is.
Well, we want to move the question to a vote.
Let me make a proposal that we can vote upon. I propose that the draft lease agreement that has been developed between Farmland and Schwen Stern be approved to be executed, along with the accompanying lease modification letter with the stewards, so that we would enter into a 3-year lease of 225 square foot area in the wooded area of Makefield Brook for honeybee keeping. And that's
okay. Well,
I'll second that.
Motion seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I would add one thing to my aye vote, Dennis, and that is,
Yes.
I'd like to see the insurance, whether it's in writing or a certificate from his insurance agent, just like we get from the farmers, so we know we're covered.
right.
And actually,
yeah,
it probably should mention us as a insured. I know we have our farmers. It'll be spent.
We are insured. I think his activity in honeybee keeping is insured on the property that he leased.
Okay.
Because we're asking him
Got
to
it.
take that responsibility within the lease.
Yeah. Okay. That's right, because then he's required to have insurance. Okay,
Right.
good.
Okay,
So
I'll
that-
talk to him about that.
Thank you. Oh, so we can move on then, Dennis. Thank you very much. I apologize. I didn't realize somehow when 8:10 was mentioned, I thought, oh, that's like another hour and a half, and it's coming up right away. So we'll do our best to finish up by then. I realize that's very tight. Sean, you wanted to give some updates on Stackhouse and Mr. Kaplan as well.
Sure. So in the interest of time, I'll make them rather quick. As you know, the projects that we had established for this year on our priority list involve Leadham's 1,000-foot fence line from Dolington to the back of Farmview. That project has been complete. I've documented it and dropped pictures as well as a video into our teams. The moral of it is that the fence line was all cleaned up, the trees were raised, the grass was mowed, so on. A total of 5 days was spent on the farm, and the hope would be to be able to maintain this in some way, shape, or form between our efforts and the buffer maintenance on behalf of the leasing farmer. Feedback has been obviously very positive. People are very happy to see work done and dead things and dying things cut down and vines be taken care of. So I'll leave Leadham's there. Stackhouse finished today. It ended up being a 6-day project, so one more day than I had hoped, but one less day than we had budgeted for. Completely different project. Much shorter fence line, but much more dense. I went over and checked in on the guys a couple of times, and they said it's a completely different animal trying to clear that fence line. A couple of neighbors came out with varying degrees of happiness. Some thrilled that something was actually being done back there. Others, asking that we continue, to do more, and some, buying the guys lunch with how satisfied they were. That project is wrapped up as of today. Because of our walkthrough on Saturday, a couple additional things were done. Down towards the closer you get to Woodside, there was a pile of brush that had accumulated there from a fallen tree from years ago. A little bit of a debate with one of the neighbors as to actually who took the tree down and how things got there. But at the end of the day, that has been picked up. The stewards mentioned a tree to us that makes planting in that lower corner difficult with their large equipment. That tree was limbed, and along 1561 Dolington, Mr. Kaplan's property, the fence line, for various reasons, has gotten into rather ugly shape. It's a culmination of a couple of things, but since Matt Corcoran was already there and had the equipment there and had a couple of extra hours, that fence line, the south fence line, has been cleaned up. Now, we didn't touch the back fence line to a great degree, and the north fence line is where the conservation project will be done, and the recent sale of the corner of that property is going to be a driveway there, so no reason to touch that. We've cleaned that area up. I've sent an email off to Mr. Kaplan about the cleanup and the go forward, what we'll be doing on our behalf, and to please remind his landscapers that nothing's to come over that fence. So my hope is that Stackhouse and Leadham's are done. I will say that for now, Leadham's is 100% done. I won't say the same for Stackhouse. I think there's more work to be done there. I think that with just ourselves and maybe a bit of help, I got the impression from some of the neighbors that they'd be willing to come over the fence and help us if we decided to dedicate some time. I think with just common tools such as what we may have between us, between trimmers and chainsaws, that we may be able to make a difference, and then maybe bring Matt Corcoran over to chip it up or do whatever we need to dispose. But that lower corner is definitely an issue that we can continue to look at. But the heavy lifting's done. Feedback is very, very good. And we did it within budget. So again, with respect for time, I'll stop there if there's any questions.
Excellent. Good news. Good news. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
Good. Sean, just a comment and a question. First of all, kudos, well done. Those are big improvements. Appreciate your leadership on it. Just one question for the minutes. You said it was completed today, which was 6 days, which was 1 day more than planned, but 1 day less than budget. Is that right?
So Leadham's, when we met with Matt, he defined that would be a 5-day project, and that was done in 5 days. On Stackhouse, he had determined it would be 7 to 10 days. So what we agreed upon 2 months ago was to go forward with 7 days a week, but not further. So I had initially given him permission to work for 5 days, but please contact me on the 5th day and let's see where we are. So he brought me over yesterday, and you could tell he wasn't quite done. He needed more hours, not a full day, but he needed more hours. So he put in a full day today. So today was the 6th day. So one less than we budgeted for, but one more than I didn't originally hope for. One thing I will mention, only so that we have it documented. I asked him to give me an idea of, now that this big project was done, you know, you don't buy a car without being able to afford insurance, right? What would the annual upkeep be for something like this now that the heavy lifting has been done? The annual upkeep would be 1 day. He stated that now all this work is done. In 1 day's time, he could get in his machine and cut all of Leadham's and all of Stackhouse fence line and have it trimmed up in 1 day. So if at the end of the year, we notice that there's growth or there's issues, we know now how to budget 1 day with Mr. Corcoran to have both those fence lines brought back up to where they are now, which I thought was encouraging.
So
That's a, yes.
both properties, I'm sorry, both
Go ahead.
properties was 1 day.
Both properties he could cut in 1 day's time.
Okay.
Now that the work has been done, for him to be able to go through, stay in his machine and cut. Yes.
Great.
Dan, you had a question?
For something that we can actually talk about later, I think that's very, very good to hear and good information.
Good.
Okay. Good. And Mr. Kaplan is going to cost share whatever bill we send over?
Not in this instance, Mike. So my conversation with Mr. Kaplan was that if we had to bring someone in to work on this project, remove things, so on, you know, we weren't budgeted for that. And his comment was, well, if you need to do that, you know, to let him know. We were ultimately able to feed it into the project we did now. Is it to the degree that we would have done if it was a complete cleanup? No. Is some of the stuff moved from the side of the fence to the back area? Yes. So it wasn't to the extent of a major cleanup, but he got rid of the ugliness. My view, as well as Matt's view, was this. If there isn't stuff there, people are going to be much more reluctant to put something there now that it's clean. The way that it did look enticed people to dump. So if people truly are dumping off of Dolington, it won't happen now, especially with the other procedures we're putting in place, such as the no trespassing sign and the camera. So it was to clean up the area in good faith. We've reached out to Mr. Kaplan about keeping it as clean as we're going to keep it, and so on. But we bared the cost within the overall project. Right. Matt just kind of went up the fence line and did this in the scope of what he was already there to do.
So it's a victory in the sense that Mr. Kaplan is on notice not to have his people dump stuff there. He may warn people off too, and so that's a win.
Correct, and that conversation's been had for sure.
And then one other clarification, Dennis, you tried, but annual upkeep is 1 day per field, or
No.
1 day for both fields?
1 day for both fields to be completely cut. So we would be looking at approximately $1,000 if we do this in the winter months to have both cut. So if the farmer's equipment isn't adequate to get in and out of the trees or ride the fence line to what we're looking to do, we would be able to bring that in for a day and take care of both what we deem to be red areas in our priority list and keep these off of our list going forward, hopefully.
All right, thanks very much for the clarification. We can carry that over to our executive session as Dan suggested. Good. Okay, anything else, Sean?
No, that's all.
That's plenty. Yeah, again, great work, great work. So I have on here spring tour kind of update. We really looked at Leadham's and Stackhouse. So in a sense, that's been done.
They're redundant unless someone has some feedback or takeaways from the day itself.
The only other item that came out of that tour is and Dan knows this property owner, was the 5 white pine trees that one of our neighbors planted on our property in landscaping their yard. And I know Tom McGowan pointed that out to us on his leased land. So Dan, you want to just, state what you've done about that since since we met with Tom?
Yeah, so a homeowner this is on the Heather Ridge property, homeowner that we worked with over about a year and a half ago, who was interested. Well, one, their landscaper had got a little aggressive, took down some brush and trees that was on our side of the property. Homeowner said, well, I could, be interested in planting something else on our side of the property. We said no, that we did not want anything planted on our side of the property, our side of the property line, which was communicated in January 2020. Tom was out there recently and saw a number of trees, purposely planted on our side of the property line. I sent that homeowner an email on Saturday. Right. It was as soon as I walked in the door, I sent him a note. I haven't heard back yet. I will try to give him a call tomorrow.
The urgency in Tom's voice seemed to be out of a bit of frustration, but B, that the trees were just planted, the dirt was still freshly moved so that they could easily be plucked out. Even though they were of good size, he felt they were good sized trees, they could easily be plucked out at this time and replanted on the neighbor's property. That's what he deemed he wanted to do.
Yep.
And Tom took me back to see those on his gator. It does aggravate Tom. First, pines are worthless scrub trees that become a problem with very weak limbs, and they spread out into the field. It's just, we can't have that. The line is marked there with a series of posts. There's not a fence, but the fence posts are in. It's obvious where the line is. And there were 5 white pines, 3 feet on our property, and it just as easily be moved 3 feet in the other on the other side of the line and serve the same purpose. So hopefully they can dig them out and replant them while they're still young and new. Otherwise, I think Tom's motivated to cut them down.
Mm-hmm.
And just for my edification, he would or would not have the full right to do that.
I think he has the full right to do that.
Yeah, he has the full right to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed. Yeah. Okay, so Daniel, follow up with that. I think we'll just stop for a moment and see, John, any public comment on this or the previous agenda item on the parcel issues?
No public comment.
Okay. Any other business? We have some time. We finished quite early. Any other business, or else we'll just sum up with a couple action items I have.
Can I do one other Heather Ridge item?
Yeah.
Let me just get the address here. So another homeowner, neighbor on Heather Ridge reached out. They have a couple trees that are kind of growing up. I wouldn't say in the fence, but it's right against it. It from the pictures, at least, it looks like the one tree is dead, and it's like kind of goes up and then basically over the fence into all of our property. So I did reach out to Tom. I haven't been out there to visually look at it myself yet, but I reached out to Tom to see if he has a chance to swing by there for 2 reasons. 1, just to take a look, give us his thoughts, and then 2, if he was interested himself in taking down any of the trees in there and billing us versus us going and getting somebody else to do it, to let us know if is something that he might be interested in doing.
Okay.
So I'll let you know.
Yep. And if we have to replace the fence, we'll do that. We'll do it. Okay. Any other business? No. Okay. So I have 3 action items. Dennis to get a copy of Dr. Sternad's homeowner policy to us. Dan to follow up with, it's Mr. Patel. on his planting of pine trees on his on our property off his Heather Ridge property, and also Dan to follow up on the other Heather Ridge property with trees growing into the fence, etc. With to follow up with Tom.
Yep.
Okay. If there is nothing else to discuss, we can move to our executive session. Are there any public comments before we adjourn our meeting, John?
No public comment.
Okay. Well, if there's no objection, we'll adjourn our meeting. And thank you very much, and see you on the flip side.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Bye.